I'm Jeffrey Way, and today is the NetTuts.com screencast of the week. So today we're going to do another PSD to HTML tutorial since the last one was so popular. So for those of you that were following Web Design Week on PSD Tuts, you'll remember this article that Collis wrote called How a Simple Layout Can Be Mixed and Matched with Patterns, Photos, and Backgrounds. And he basically took a simple layout and with just changing a few things like background images and spacing and some highlighting and borders, he made just an amazing looking site out of a very simple layout. So what I decided to do is we are going to take this blue one right here, and we are going to take this and convert it to HTML. Okay, so he has a nice layout. We are going to take the PSD, slice it up, turn it into HTML and CSS, and make it ready for the web. Now, I should just give you a quick warning. This is my interpretation of how to do it. I'm sure Collis would have his own way, but this is the way I did it. So just a quick warning there. Okay, so let me show you what I ended up with. Here is what I ended up. Let me zoom out just a little bit since I'm on this tiny screen. Okay, this is more or less what I ended up with. So we have the transparency, we have the correct spacing that he set up. We have this nice radial gradient. We have this font that he used. So a lot of nice things. We have this nice texture background that he created. All right, so we are ready to get started. We're going to start from scratch, and let's get into it. I'm going to move over to Photoshop now. And this is very similar to something you would probably have for your own projects. This is Collis's Photoshop PSD. So if we come in, let's just take a look at a few important things. So what I'm going to do, since I have very little real estate, is I'm just going to close all this out for a moment. Okay, so first I recommend, if you haven't already, go and read that article because he has some great tips on things to look out for. So let's just take a quick review. I'm going to go to the color selector. Now, these are things that Collis does that you don't even realize adds to the layout. So, excuse me, let's click right up here at the top of this main. You'll see it's 3A, 3A, 3A. Now, if we come down, you can see it's actually changing to ECEC. So even though it's very subtle, he's got an extremely subtle gradient going for this main. So it could be very easy to just ignore that and do a white background because it's not noticeable. But at some level it is. So you need to be paying attention to those. Don't just set a white background for this main. You need to have a nice gradient. Next, he's got this nice heading font, which I believe is Rockwell. Yep. I don't have the font installed on this computer. Let's see what else. All right, here, let's take a look at this banner. If you can see here, we could just set a dark blue background and then add this image in. But if you zoom in a little bit, you'll see he added a nice little radial gradient here. So this was something I had to think about for a little bit about how to do it. And I determined, since this is not an image heavy layout, I could afford to maybe have a little bit higher an image size. So what I did is I simply just cropped out this entire banner right here. And I added this lower triangle. Now, I could have added that after the fact, but I decided it would be best to save it as a 24-bit ping. That way I don't have to worry about adding a little triangle and positioning it perfectly. Okay, so that's how I got the first one. You're welcome to, if you want, just do it the quick way, is select your area, crop it out. And then save it. Now you want to make sure that you get rid of this lower area, and you can do that by finding the appropriate layers and turning them off. But we're not going to do that since I've already sliced everything up. I'm just going to go over everything with you. Okay, another area that I needed to create an image for is if we come to the sidebar, we have another one of these little triangles. Now, there are many ways that we could have done it. I decided the best way would just be to take this entire sample right here, save it, and then when we create our sidebar in HTML, we will position it as a background image, and then we'll just position it at the top point, and that'll create that area. So once again, you would just crop that out or slice it out, save it, and then save it as sidebar. Okay, what else? Now, for this heading, we could have used something like Cipher. Or we could have just used, one of the normal fonts, and either method would be fine. Just to keep it true to his original design, I actually sliced out this text so we could have the Rockwell text on the site, and you can just use image replacement. So once again, with your slicing tool or with the crop, just slice that out. You want to make sure that it doesn't have this blue background. So go into layers, find your dark blue background, unselect it so you have a transparent background. You crop it out, save it for the web, and save it as a 24-bit ping, and that'll preserve the transparency. And then also do the same for your logo. Okay, next. If you will notice your sidebar here and your navigation, they're got about, I'd say, 50 or 60% opacity. So you might think, well, I can just set, the background color of the navigation div to black and then bring the opacity down. Now you could do that, but it requires a bunch of hacks. I think there's about 5 different hacks you have to use to get opacity to show correctly on all the different browsers. So what I decided to do was to slice out, let me zoom in. I decided to just slice out just a little bit. So if we come up here, I just grabbed a portion, selected it like so, saved it for the web, cropped it out, and then saved it for the web, and once again saved it as a 24-bit ping. And then in order to get the older browsers to display the transparency, we're just going to use a small JavaScript file called unit ping fix, and that will take care of that. That way we don't have to worry about our CSS not validating and adding all this extra code. And other than that, the primary things to focus on and the primary things that make this layout as functional and nice looking as it is the spacing. Look at all of this spacing that Collis has added here. And this is, I think, in my opinion, what he's most talented at, is the spacing. Everywhere you look, there's just incredible amounts of spacing, and that's what makes it so easy on the eyes. And then also the last thing you need to get, of course, is this background. And once again, just select a nice little square area, save it for the web, and then we will just repeat that. Okay, that should take care of it. And then also, kind of his trademark is these nice little borders at the top. If we look at the top of our banner, we have this dark blue, but then he adds a top border of just a lighter blue, and it's amazing how much that really does. It's really incredible, actually, how much that can make a layout more deep and add a bit more depth. But we will add that little border using CSS. So all you need to crop out for the banner is just the area below it. All right, and that takes care of the PSD. I know I didn't do it step by step, and it's because I'm trying to keep this so it's not an hour and a half long again. But if you do need help with that, go back to the first PSD to XHTML, and that gives step-by-step instructions, and I will link to that on this article. So the next step is I've cropped everything out. I've saved them as images. Let's take a look at what I have. Once again, here's my banner background. We have our background for the website. We have our navigation background. Remember the triangle that I told you about? That's the triangle for the sidebar. And our logo. Very simple stuff. The primary background color, that was that main section with the very subtle white gradient. And all I did there, just to be as pragmatic as possible, is I just selected a small area like so. All right, sliced it out or cropped it out and then saved it for the web. And then we will just repeat that horizontally. All right, let's go in. My code editor of the week I'm using is Aptana. It's going pretty well. I think to some extent it's a little bloated. For those of you guys that have been watching, I've been using a different code editor every other week. And so this week's Aptana, I'm liking it. I'll give you a little more info after I've had more time to use it. All right, so we have a blank index.html page. I'm going to refresh this, and this is going to include those images that we just sliced out. All right, so let's get right into it. Within the body tag, I'm going to create the content. So I'm going to wrap everything within a div with an ID of container. And let's get started with the header. So I'm going to do div ID equals header. And I'm going to start out with that heading, your logo. Okay, close that out. And then next, if we come back to our layout, you'll remember we have this little area right here using a single layout to create several different looks. And this is what Collis did in his original design. So let's just copy that and let's paste it into our solution. And I'm going to use a small tag for that. Okay. That should do it for our header. So let's close that out.